Welcome back to Real Talk Fitness with AMPT. Today's episode is one I'm really excited for because it challenges something a lot of people struggle with. Do we have to pick one thing or can we evolve? I've got Hayden on today and his journey is honestly unreal. From CrossFit to Olympic weightlifting to chasing the Olympics in bobsled over in America and now moving to cycling. He's not just changed sports, he's completely rebuilt himself multiple times. And what I love so much about this episode is we're not just talking about training, we're talking about the identity, the discipline, and what it actually takes to go to these levels in all these different areas. And today we speak a lot about competition and how that can actually help you rather than hinder you, and expectations that we place on ourselves. I feel like a lot of people can take away a lot from today's episode. So we want to welcome Hayden on for this episode and let's begin. All right, so welcome to the podcast, Hayden.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's okay. I'm really keen, as I just said to you briefly before we jumped on, I'm pretty keen to go inside your mind and share your story with lots of others in terms of how sport fitted in and I guess, all these different levels. And I guess a lot of people probably can take lots of lessons mindset-wise and, if they're feeling tunnel vision that they have to do just the one thing. So kind of take me back to where did the sport start for you? Did you do any sports growing up?
Yeah, I think, I've always sort of played sports growing up. And I do tell people a lot. When I was growing up, my old man, his philosophy was he was very much forced into a single sport and that's the only thing that he could do. And so he sort of hated it. So his philosophy was to just chuck me in as many different sports as possible. So when I was growing up, athletics, swimming, soccer, tennis. I did ice hockey for a couple of years. Just heaps of random things that I think definitely as a kid helped sort of develop like a pretty well-rounded sort of coordination and athleticism and stuff, and definitely made it fun and sort of kept it interesting for me growing up.
Yeah, that's so crazy because I guess that kind of will make more sense to people as we go along in terms of like how this has all ended up. But I guess how did the gym first get introduced? Like where did the lifting part come into your journey?
Probably around high school, like sort of on the rugby sort of development program, we started doing lifting and stuff like that. And then I sort of just, wanted to be a classic gym bro and started lifting weights myself. And then I guess it wasn't until, obviously, then I joined the army when I was 18. So, training is a big part of that anyway. Like you got to do it every day, like running, pack marching, lifting, like just a whole bunch of sort of different stuff. So I guess like gym has always sort of been a part of my life. And then, I got out of the army when I was 23 and started pursuing personal training and stuff. So then I guess the gym became my whole life.
Yeah. And
so.
I feel like mindset wise, like what desire did you have to become a PT? Like, was it because in terms of you realized how the fitness side of things had helped you, or was it just because of helping other people achieve optimal health, or because I feel like everyone's reasoning is so different, and I feel like then it became your life. It makes more sense as we go through, but I guess where did that theory come in, like leaving the army and going, yep, that's what I want to do?
Yeah, well, I guess like I've always, like I said, just sort of loved that fitness and training sort of lifestyle. So I guess it sort of came to a point, I got to, do a tour in the army and stuff like that. And I felt like I sort of achieved all that I wanted to set out and achieve. So I just started looking at alternate routes and then sort of stumbled across that. So started doing my Cert 3 and 4 when I was in the army, and then thought, yeah, let's get into it. And I just, yeah, I guess always just wanted to help people in some sort of way, and I thought that was the next best step.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And obviously, for anyone that's listening to today's episode, is that Hayden has done Olympic lifting, CrossFit, like went over to America just recently for bobsled. Now is moving into more of a cycling side of things. So I guess what we're sort of going into is into the deep mind of Hayden and how all of this sort of falls into place. So I guess where did CrossFit come into this? Was that something that you just started to do for your own passion and then sort of fell into running the CrossFit gym yourself?
Yeah, so I think CrossFit was sort of the one that started it all. I sort of found CrossFit towards the end of my army career, and then just jumped headfirst straight into that. I just fell in love with it pretty much straight away. And I've been doing that ever since. So just joined a CrossFit gym back home, started coaching, and then ended up getting the role to take it over. And I've been owning one now for the last couple of years as well. And yeah, I think like I put a lot of my successes down to CrossFit. I think that's been like the foundation for everything that I've done. Before we go like to the other sports, I feel like having CrossFit is that stable, that foundation just made it so much easier to cross over into other things. Like if I wanted to get good at running, I'd do CrossFit and then a couple of running sessions on top. If I wanted to get good at lifting, I'd do CrossFit and then a couple of extra lifting sessions on top. And if I wanted to get good at sprinting, CrossFit plus a couple of sprinting and plyo sessions on top. Like it just
It all just rolled over.
it all just sort of fell on top of each other.
I guess CrossFit over the years, I feel like even me being in the industry, and I love CrossFit, but I feel like so many people go, oh, CrossFit, but I guess, for someone that, speaks so highly of it, and obviously I can see the relay of all of that, but for anybody listening, like how would you explain CrossFit to just the general person that's listening? Because I think some people hear it and go, oh, that's when you do, like, I guess I've heard that a lot. Oh, that's where you do all that stupid stuff. And I was like,
All
well,
the
it's not
crazy
really.
stuff.
Yeah, it's not really. But how would you explain that?
Honestly, like CrossFit is just a training. Well, here's the thing. It is two different things. And I think that's where people sort of get the two things crossed over a little bit. Like one, it is a training methodology for like the general population, and it's lifting, it's fitness, it's monostructural work, like it's all of that sort of condensed in. But then on the other side, it is also a sport. So it is the sport of fitness. So like it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to do CrossFit, like if you want to do it for fun and just to get fit and healthier, like you can absolutely do it. But then on the other hand, if you want to do it as a sport, like there's also that avenue as well. And I think that's where people sort of get that blurred a little bit, is they see the people go crazy, but they're only seeing the people that do the sport side of it, because I guess, I don't know, influencers tend to be the ones that are online the most and the ones that post the crazy stuff, like you're not just getting the everyday person that wants to just go to the gym and get fitter posting about their CrossFit session that they did for the day, I guess. If that makes sense. Like,
I feel like you've just explained that in a complete nutshell, because you're 100% right. Like I feel like this generation is so driven with what we see on socials, which is another reason why I'm bringing all you amazing people onto the podcast, is because I feel like hearing it from the horse's mouth itself is so different. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they just see all your successes, but they have no idea what's actually gone into it on the background. So I feel like even just explaining that is going to help the average person kind of understand that, be like, oh, it isn't as scary as what it may seem.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I feel like that kind of leads us into like, the CrossFit was obviously your foundation, and then
Mm.
is that where it led to, like, what sort of came next for you? Was it the Olympic weightlifting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess like that's a pretty huge part of CrossFit anyway, is like the introduction of Olympic weightlifting and stuff. So that was sort of where I gravitated to best. Like that was sort of my strong point. Like that's sort of just the way, the kind of athlete that I am. Like I wouldn't say I'm the fittest one on the field, but more often than not, I'm sort of like the strongest one. So I guess I just gravitated more towards that and fell in love with weightlifting and found that I can do that externally as well and do weightlifting comps and stuff like that. So yeah, naturally, if I find that there's a way to compete in something, I sort of jump into it straight away. So then I started, yeah, doing that and competing externally. You know, won a few state titles, competed at nationals, that sort of stuff. So, and yeah, just sort of love. Yeah, I
And
do.
I
I do
thought,
love weightlifting.
yeah, well, I feel like that kind of like leads me sort of off tangent, but I feel like a lot of people can take away from this as well is that, like, you did kind of mention before that it was something that, you know, generally that you were good at, and you know, you might not be the fastest, but that was always, and that's something, the beauty about CrossFit too, for anybody listening, is that there is so many modalities in there that you don't have to be 100% at all of them. But how, like, I guess, I don't know how to word this exact question, but a lot of people, I feel like, you know, kind of look at their body type or whatever, and, you know, I guess battle against themselves rather than working within their strengths, like what you just said then. Like, you kind of know that you might not always be the fastest, but you're 90% going to be the strongest. Mentally, how did you get to that point just of acceptance of that?
I've just like, I was sort of trying to think of like going back to how you were saying of people not being happy to work on their weaknesses. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah, that is the beauty of CrossFit in the sense of like you can do it forever because there's always something to get good at. I guess I've always been someone that just loves learning things, and I don't care too much if I suck at it to start with, which I think is why I've just taken on so many different sports, is because I'm just happy to learn and then progress through something. I guess I've sort of lost track of where
Yeah,
I
so
am. I
like,
guess like
like the mentality of kind of accepting that, like, because I think it's a really big thing, like with all the sports that you have done, is kind of going that, you know, as you said before, like you go into it knowing that you might not be the best, but then working on it, like the mentality behind that, like I feel like kind of going into your mind, to anyone that is listening, is that what mentality do you have to push through that? Because as soon as someone sucks at something, the perseverance, the discipline, the ability to push through that, like how do you get through that?
hmm. Well, I mean, I guess I've sucked at a lot of sports, and you just you just got to sort of keep going. I guess like the only two ways that you can get better at anything is oh geez, I've just lost track of my words. Only two ways to get better at something is consistency and progressive overload. And like it really doesn't matter what it is. Like if I wanted to get really good at endurance sports, you know, I probably could, but you know, there's some takeaways with that. I wouldn't be as strong or as fast anymore. That's not really the avenue I want to go down at the moment. But like, you know, I sucked at certain elements of my weightlifting, and it's like, okay, you break it down. Like, let's just go back to square one and and go again. Like, it has taken me a long time. And I guess sort of, like I've met people over the years that they come in and they go, oh, how'd you get so good at that? And it's like, well, I've been doing this for over 8 years. Like, you do you get good at it eventually if you really stick to it. Like, unfortunately, nothing happens overnight. Like, you're not going to get good at something in a month, but if you keep knuckling down and actually trust in a process, and once you start to see the results, it gets very addicting very quickly, and it's a lot easier to sort of keep chasing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I think
I
that's the
feel
hard
like,
part is you got to start. You got to persevere just for a little bit and sort of push through that, and you'll see some gains, and I think that's when you start to fall in love with it.
yeah, because I feel like that's where a lot of people, like, and even just the general pop that would be listening to this, is that, like, I feel like, as I said before about the social media and just, everybody seeing everybody's successes, but nobody posts 90% of their failures. Nobody
No, I mean,
talks about like how long it took and how many times they doubted themselves and everything like that. Which is, I guess, what I find so fascinating about every time you've gone into something like Olympic weightlifting. You haven't just gone in and gone, I'm just gonna, compete at a couple of comps. Like, you've gone from, okay, I'm gonna do this, to I'm gonna compete and at quite a high level. So, like, mentally, I feel like that's so interesting of how you committed to that, and where did all your other training fit in?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's but I've just always loved competing. Like I've always tried to push all my members and everyone that I see to try and just get into competing. I think it's just because I love it so much. I don't know what it is. Might just be me being a bit of a mental head case, but like I thrive on that competition, and then just seeing those improvements and having a goal to chase, I think, is probably actually like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I hate sort of just training for nothing. Like, that's I need to sort
Having
of be.
purpose.
I got to have a purpose and something to push towards. And like, CrossFit was always, a thing for the longest time, because there's always, there's a CrossFit competition like every 2 weeks. Like, if you look around for one, they're always going, but it becomes a pretty expensive hobby if you do it compete every 2 weeks. But when I was overseas, doing bobsled, like, I ended up hurting, like, I tore my quad pretty early on in the season, so like it did make it tough and sort of hurt my knee. So coming home, I've been pretty much I can't really run or squat anymore, just because I've found out there's no cartilage left in my knee, which is unfortunately no good. So it's going to be a bit of a process to get that right. But what I did find was cycling didn't hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, and then once I started doing it, I just literally looked into, there's a local bike race, down the coast. I'm just going to go and enter in that. And I was like, I'll give it a go. And then I won. And I was like, well, this is cool. I want to do this more. So then that's just sort of where that fell into. So
Yeah, so it's just like that. And I feel like that's so good to encourage people, like, because not every, like, I feel like that's the other side of the coin, is the competition. I feel like people don't like to be knocked down or have the numbers in front of them as such. Like, in what I'm saying is, whereas, like, you thrive off that. Well, here is where I'm at. If I did X, Y, and Z, I could be here.
I just think it's the ultimate case of accountability, is like having a competition there, and like having something to push, because everyone can go to the gym when they're motivated, and like, but unfortunately, motivation's just a feeling. So, and it always always fades. Like there's always days where you don't want to do it, but I think having that goal, or like, oh, I'm doing this in 12 weeks time, I want to be good for that just sort of like can reignite that flame and keep you going even when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
And
that's huge.
yeah.
That is like, so, because that would explain so much about your history. Like, as I said, from Olympic weightlifting to, well, CrossFit, sorry, to Olympic weightlifting to the bobsled, which I can't wait to get into in this episode. And then cycling, like it kind of explains how, like, that accountability. So these competitions aren't just in it to sort of, obviously you have that burning desire to always become better within yourself, but they're more for your accountability, for then your discipline.
Yeah. And like there is no better way of testing yourself than competing. Like, and it doesn't always have to be against others, that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. But like
Yeah.
you can, like I don't really have any high like expectations at the moment with cycling. This is my best example, I guess, because like I'm new to it at the moment. But like every time I go into a race, I can see what my best power output was, or what my average speed was, and stuff like that. And even if I don't win, like I might have won against myself. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I guess competition is always the best way to get the best out of you, I think, because like if you're doing it by yourself all the time, it can get pretty lonely and pretty tough. Like, but if you've got people yelling at you to do better, like you're going to pull your finger out a little bit more, and then you'll be able to prove to yourself, whoa, I could actually do a little bit more. And then you can take that, little win back to training and be like, I know I can do this because I did it last weekend. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I think that's a
yeah,
huge takeaway to anyone listening. Like, I feel like that's probably the golden nugget of today's episode, is that I think a lot of people think that the competing side of things, or going to these levels in each of these sports, like, do you know what I mean? Like, they see your successes. Like, even when I reached out, I was like, holy shit, like, you go into these sports, but you don't just go in, and how did this all come about? But I guess, understanding that part of competing, I feel like a huge takeaway for anybody listening is that it's not always about competing against others. It's about testing yourself, having that accountability to continue to show up to training, and to prove and build self-trust with you.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I don't know. I think if you always wait and wait and wait until you think you're fit enough, you can always be fitter. You can always be faster. You can always be stronger. It doesn't matter. Like just start and then just build from there. Like
Yeah.
you go back to if no one knows what the CrossFit Open is, it's like a 3-week competition worldwide where it sort of tests your fitness over 3 workouts, and then you get put on a scoreboard. Like we do that at our gym every year, and it's such a fun time. Like it's the coolest. But I've always got a little bit of push and pull against some of the members, being like, I don't want to do it. Like I'm not fit enough. I don't want. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like just this is the starting point. Like this is ground zero. Just get in, do it. You'll get a score. You'll prove to yourself that you can actually do more than you think, and then it's just a building block for next year, and like something to like beat yourself when it comes around, like the next time. Like it doesn't matter who
Yeah.
you're going up against. Like if you're not trying to go pro, it doesn't matter. Like it's just such a good way to test yourself and push yourself more than what you normally would.
Yeah, no.
That's why I love competing so much. But
I feel like that explains a lot, right? Like, 'cause as I said, like, I feel like that is a huge gold nugget in today's episode, because I feel like a lot of people see it, and as you said, like, you nailed it. Like, oh, I'm not good enough. I could never do that. But it's like, really, it's you versus you, testing yourself, proving, trusting, all those sorts of things, which kind of brings me to, from CrossFit to Olympic weightlifting, where
Mhm.
the hell on earth did bobsledding or bobsled fit into this?
Yeah, honestly,
Where did that come from?
it just sort of popped out of nowhere. It was 2 years ago. They they were just doing like a testing a day called like a combine. Like I don't know if you know, it's just like a fitness test basically for aspiring bobsledders, and they were just looking to build their team going into the 2026 Winter Olympics. And I was like, having a look, and they showed what the tests were, and I was like, well, I'm good at that stuff, like they had
Yeah,
a 1 RM power clean, a 3 rep max back squat, a sprint, a jump, a throw, and I was like, this is me in a nutshell. So I just reached out and did the tests, and then that's just how it happened. Then I got an invite to go over to America, and that's that's where it all started from. So
yeah,
I literally
wow.
just popped just came up on Instagram. That's a
And see, that's crazy. So I guess like the mentality just to dive in, like,
yeah.
do you ever doubt yourself? Because I feel like, for anybody listening, like I'm sure everyone has aspirations and never follows through because they doubt themselves so much. Do you ever have those moments of doubt going, what have I just done? Like, am I going to be good enough?
Oh no, honestly, there's always moments of doubt and always moments of nerve, like going into sort of any competition, because I always have such high expectations on myself. But then I think, like, who cares? Like, just have a crack. And the only thing that you can guarantee that if you don't do it is you're going to fail if you don't give it a crack. So I thought,
Yeah.
oh, who cares? Like, this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm just going to rip in. So then I just lasered in. I just went all in on getting as absolutely fast and as powerful as I could. And I did that for a solid 18 months, and then spent the last 4 months overseas touring Canada and the US, trying to make the Olympics.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah,
Crazy.
we
Um,
fell short, unfortunately, only just. But yeah.
Wow. So how did they test that in terms of like obviously go over there like all of these different teams to try and get
Mhm.
into the Olympics? When you say you've fallen short, what were their markers?
Yeah, so we had 7 races across Canada and US, and all the other countries or whatever competed. So I guess it's like any sort of, if you watch a Formula One or the V8
Yeah,
Supercars or something like that, like you do a race, you get placed, and then you get a certain amount of points per placing, and then you go to the next one, so on and so forth. And then
yeah.
at the end of the season, we were one spot out. we finished. They take 28 sleds, and we were the next sled out, unfortunately. So
Wow. And
yeah.
so that's crazy. And I guess too, like going from all these different modalities, and I think that's something that, people listening will find this very interesting. Food wise, performance wise, body composition wise, how have you manipulated that? Like obviously now you're into cycling, so that's a whole
Mm,
nother field again. But
yeah.
I guess how have you, just diving into the sport's fine, but then I guess when you go all in, I guess that requires, as you said, like
extra
a level
extra
of
stunts.
commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, I
how does
think
that fit in?
um a lot of testing and adjusting. I think like my body composition over the years has probably been one of the most interesting things. Like when I first started CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting, I was about 80 kilos. Like I was decently strong, but I was definitely on the fitter side. And then as a sort of progressed into weightlifting, I wanted to lift more, and so I started to go up in the weight categories and stuff. So I was like 85, sort of thing like that. And then that's when bobsledding came in, and bobsledders, they want you to be pretty heavy, like, because the heavier weights move faster downhill. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to a water park, but if you go down by yourself, it's all right. But if you go down with holding on to your kid, like, you'll go faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You zoom. Because just weight moves faster downhill. So they want you to be as heavy as possible. So they wanted me to be up around 100 kilos. So for me, that was a pretty big task. It was, just a lot of eating, not as much conditioning, just a lot of power and, plyometric work, heavy lifting, all that sort of stuff, just trying to build as much muscle as possible. Unfortunately, like, trying to put on 15 kilos in the span of, a year is pretty sort of impossible to do, naturally. So, like, I got heavy, but there was a lot of fat involved. I was strong as hell, I could throw 150 kilos up and over my head, no dramas. But, I think my joints did pay for it a little bit. But again, it's sort of one of those fuck it and find out sort of moments. Once in a lifetime opportunity. I was like, well, I'm just going to go all in. So I did get heavy. I wouldn't say, I've definitely been leaner in the past and looked fitter. I was strong, call it power, not fat. But since then, I came home and I was like, okay, I don't need to be that heavy anymore. Like, that sort of goal is gone. Unfortunately, the Olympics sort of came and gone, and so I'm down to about 88 now. It was sort of pretty easy to drop that weight because I was just holding on to a lot of inflammation and stuff as well, I think. But cycling at the moment, I'm about that sort of 88. I think I want to try and maybe push down to about 85 or somewhere around that, just because, better aerodynamics and stuff like that, better power to weight ratio if you're on a lighter sort of bike.
Wow.
But I've been up and down. I've been all over the shop. It's been a fun journey, but weight moves weight. The heavier you are, the heavier you're going to lift probably. But
I feel like that's so interesting too for people to hear, because realistically, like, well, more so the females, but a lot of males really could benefit from listening to this as well, because I guess, ideally everybody is body conscious at some stage, but when it comes to performance and goals, we're in like all these different sports. But it's not to say, like, if we're talking about other sports, they're going to have other, obviously CrossFit, you want to be muscly but also lean to be, semi good and fast and strong and all those sorts of things. I think it's really interesting to hear that, and to, obviously, to be heavy to go down the bobsled makes logical sense, but the toll that it would actually take on your body, not only committing to a different sport and a different way of training, but the way you have to manipulate your body to get the best out of it as well. That's a whole nother level.
And you got to be okay just with, like, where you're at. It doesn't really matter what you're like. If you have a certain goal in mind, like, there's usually always a bit of push and pull. Like, when I came back from bobsled, the CrossFit Open started 2 weeks later, and I was like nearly 100 kilos. I hadn't done a single burpee in about 5 months. Like, I was not fit. And I think maybe I'm just saying this out loud for myself as well, but, like, for other people, like, it's okay if you're not where you want to be. Like, I had pretty high expectations on myself anyway, but at the end of the day, it was like, that wasn't a priority. So, like, you shouldn't be all up in arms about certain results if you didn't put that work in,
Yeah.
like, and I
See,
felt like I was
yeah.
coming back. I felt like I was coming back as a rookie again. I do hear, I guess similar situations. If someone takes a bit of time off training and then they come back, whether they're heavier or they just feel unfitter, and they're like, "Oh, I can't get into it again." And it's like, you can. You just, lower your expectations. Like, you're not going to be doing the same stuff you did before. Just chill out. You'll get back there in no time. Like, it's okay to start again. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
take that long. And I mean, like I said, when did I get back? End of January, and we're in. It's been about 3 months, and I managed to drop 12 kilos, and I'm back to feeling much fitter already. Like that muscle has memory. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And I
it's
feel like that's huge for people to realize though too, like especially being at all levels that you have been at, and to come back and to go into the open and mentally be able to be okay with kind of, taking that little bit of pressure off yourself because the focus had shifted.
mm,
And to put that unrealistic expectation on yourself is only going to leave with that mentality of feeling defeated rather than going everything had its purpose and
yeah,
you'll get back
just being
there.
okay with it. Like, the priorities were different then, so it's like, low, yeah, don't have such high expectations if you didn't do the work. Like,
Yeah.
for me, it was a little tough, because like CrossFit has always been my thing, but like I hadn't done it in over 6 months. I had to sort of give the ego a little kick and be like, you're not going to do as good this year, and it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
we'll just start
Yeah.
again, we'll just build, and next year will be a different story. So
And
it's
like, I feel like that's another huge takeaway from today's episode too, because I feel like when you've been at the elite level of all of these different things that you have been at, and then shifting your focus from one to the other, and I feel like that's another huge part for people to realize is you can change your focus and you can go back. Like there's nothing
mm,
set in stone just because, you've been at, say, like in your circumstance, been at elite levels in each thing. And, it doesn't mean that without a few months, like as you said, like a couple of months and you're already back down to feeling fitter and stronger. And I'm sure as if you were to do the open again, that like in that short amount of time, there would be a huge improvement again.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like I think a lot of people get so tunnel visioned, and I feel like that's what intrigued me so much of having you on the podcast is people get so tunnel visioned in going, I can't go all in that because what about this? Or what about
And
that?
I
And
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess my mentality is just give it a crack. Just fuck around and find out is sort of how I see it. And if it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, I get a little bit of a kick, I think, out of some of those things where it's like, oh, that's so out of your realm. Like, there's no way you can do that. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just prove you wrong. Like,
Yeah.
it won't take long. And like I said, I think that just sort of goes back to, CrossFit is such a good foundation. Is like, it does sort of cover everything, but like a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
like it's, um, like whether or not I wanted to, good at sprinting. Like, I just had to do CrossFit and then just a couple of extra sprinting sessions to get a little bit more explosive and elastic sort of thing. Whereas if I wanted to build into like doing a marathon or something, like I'd still do my CrossFit to keep the joints and muscles strong, and then I'd just add another 3 or so runs in per week to build the endurance up. Like,
Yeah. And I
oh,
guess you spoke earlier about like tearing your quad over in America and then coming back. And
yeah,
is that how you found cycling? So, like,
yeah.
obviously, and now competing in cycling is that accountability that we spoke about before, like that discipline, that structure. Is that how cycling sort of come into your current phase?
Yeah, pretty much. Like during COVID, I found a bit of a love for cycling. I think just because like that was all you could sort of do. Like if you wanted to get out of the house, it was either run or cycle. So like I did get pretty good at it. But now, unfortunately, yeah, I did tear my quad. So there's deep range squatting or anything like that's just sort of out of the question for the moment. And cycling, you don't have that much sort of knee flexion. So actually, I was like, oh my god, it doesn't hurt. And then I just sort of entered a little race just for fun, and like I said, I won it. So I was like, oh, actually, I might not be too bad at this. Like I've always had strong legs, and I thought, I'm going to give it a crack. So, yeah, and I just thought, God, like, just shoot for the stars, really. Like, let's just go all in.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give Velodrome racing a bit of a crack and see if we can make the national team or push towards the Com Games or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know where it's going to take. So I guess too, like with just using your current phase, like how does that look for your training? So like obviously, like we've always come back to CrossFit being your foundation. How does that change your weekly training schedule?
With cycling,
Yeah, so adding cycling in
it's
and trying to get better at that, like
yeah,
how have you then structured? Just because I feel like this would be very intriguing for a lot of other people too. So it's like we've spoken about, how obviously your foundation and how each one you just
hmm
adding a little bit of this. So how
yeah.
do you then structure your training with cycling being your focus?
Well, sort of like at the moment, my CrossFit training is like I'll either jump in with a class just for fun. Unfortunately, if it's a lot of squatting and stuff, like I'll just have to scale the movements back a little bit. But that's sort of my way to get some intensity and fun in with the group. But outside of that, it's just a lot of accessory work, just trying to build the glutes up. And then, you know, like I said, I'm trying to go for like a higher sort of level. So I'm pushing like two sessions a day, a couple of times a week, and that's where I might fit in an extra bike. Um, so I might
Yeah.
do one VO2 max bike session, a couple of an interval session, and then like one or two longer rides um, just to sort of build the endurance in the legs up a little bit and just get comfortable in those sort of positions on the bike. So I mean, still in total, I still be doing 3 to 4 bike sessions a week, and then another 3 to 4 CrossFit sessions a week. And sometimes they just sort of overlap a little bit. Like that's sort
Yeah.
of how my structure is, and yeah.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
yeah, that I feel like again, like I'll be popping that into the podcast notes for anybody that's listening to is just that how that you can choose one sort of foundation and just add to it depending on what sort of I guess sport that you're going to. Like when you spoke
yeah,
earlier about bobsled, it was like you done less high intensity and just more about the power, but still kept your foundation quite the same.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I guess the mindset, like, so how do you handle starting again? So, like, when you go into these sports, obviously you're going in at just the entry level. Like, how do you mentally handle that starting again in a new sport? Do you ever feel like, you know, I guess again I speak about doubt, but do you ever have that like, am I doing the right thing sort of, or is it just more about you have that lower expectation? I just find that quite interesting. Like you're quite happy
Yeah.
to jump in.
Yeah, I
Like,
think yeah, I think I am just sort of happy to just jump in and give it a crack. Um, and I think sometimes having no expectations helped get a better outcome anyway. Like, you know, competing through the years with CrossFit and stuff, like I feel like my nerves have increased sort of with every competition because like my expectations to perform well sort of go up.
yeah,
Whereas, I entered that bike competition and I took meds, like my wife with me, and I was just like, I'm just here to have a good time. Like, I just hope I don't get dropped off the back of the pack too early. Like, I just want to see what happens. And I managed. I was just having a good time, and then at the end, I sprinted and finished first, and I was like, oh, there you go. Like, it just sort of came about. So like, I'm more than happy just to give it a crack and just
Yeah.
see what happens. I don't know. I think I get a kick out of learning, and you've probably heard of like, yeah, newbie gains and stuff like that. Like when you first start at the gym, like you'll see big results quickly, which is super exciting. But I think I've been doing it for a long time. Like I know that there's going to be big gains, and then I know those gains are going to start to slow down. But you got to you just got to keep going, because the gains they'll keep coming if you keep going. So
Yeah.
I'm
That
just yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the advice for like anybody that, I guess mentally that might struggle with like feeling like a beginner is it just all about lowering your expectations. And I feel like the other takeaway that I've just taken from that personally is that, like, when you have higher expectations, you're going to have higher nerves.
Mm, yeah. And I
Which
think
I
like,
think is
I
huge.
mean, yeah, I mean, being nervous isn't a bad thing. It just
No.
means that you care. Um, but yeah, I think people put too much pressure on themselves in too many situations when ultimately, it doesn't matter all that much, like unless you're a professional athlete and you're trying to qualify for something, and like then the nerves get sort of crazy and the pressure, obviously. But if you're just trying to do something just for the sake of, getting fitter and stronger, like just jump in, just give it a crack. Like it doesn't matter. I think more often than not, you'll find that people are super supportive of those that are just giving it a crack, rather than, like I got so much praise when I went to the cycling club. I didn't know anyone. I was just like, you know, g'day, how, everyone's super friendly. They want to sort of help you along and whatever. I think like if you go into a CrossFit gym, no one cares about what you're lifting or how fast you're going. Like they just want to see you giving it a crack, and at the end of every sesh, give each other a high five. Like everyone just had a good time. I think
Yeah.
it is hard. It is hard to cross that sort of, help people understand that no one really cares. I guess is probably I don't know, the nicest way of saying it. Like no one cares what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just get in and just have a crack. Like,
Yeah, I feel like that's another
um,
huge takeaway, is that, like, I think people get caught up so much in, like, and again, that kind of takes me back to what we spoke about at the start of the episode, is that, and it's something that you said as well, comparison is that thief of joy. They care
mm,
so much about, again, social media, like what other people are doing, rather than just jumping in. And the reality is, as you said, no one really cares what anybody else is doing.
no.
Um,
And I guess at the end of that, you just got to find something that you enjoy as well. And I
yeah,
think that's why I've always liked cycling in the fact that, I just thought I was pretty good at it. Like I've got the legs for it. Wanted to, I like sort of pushing through that, trying to grow the legs and all that stuff. And then at the end of it, I was like, well, I enjoy it. It's fun. Like I'm keen to get back into it. And I don't know, maybe my ADHD is too aggressive, but like if I love something, I'm going all
yeah.
in. It's just, yeah, I'll dive in, and I'll just hyper focus on it a lot. Maybe that's just me, but yeah.
Well, I feel like that kind of explains a lot of the successes, right? Like, I guess, you're keen to learn, you're open, overcome like a lot of obviously mental things and learn a lot along the way. But I guess like
Mm,
that hyper fixation is where it's like, well, if this is what I've got to do that, let's do that.
yeah.
But I guess advice for people that are listening, like when they want to train for everything at once. Like I feel like that's sometimes, like, generally what like a lot of people try and do. Well, how do you,
Yeah.
I want to be good at this, but I also want to be good at that. And what advice do you have, like, or what do you feel that people often get wrong when they try to do that?
I guess like there is always a give and take. It depends on, I guess, the sport or like the things that they're trying to accomplish. Like if you if you're trying to get good at, doing an ultra marathon, but then you also want to get the best out of your clean and jerk and your snatch, like there's going to be a bit of a push and pull. Like they're both
Yeah.
sort of polar opposites. Um, and it just sort of, what's your priority in that sense? Because you can always go from one to the other. Like it'll just take a little bit longer. But, I think I started at, CrossFit, and then sort of went into weightlifting. And then, like I said, I found the bobsled, and the tests that were involved in the bobsled was very similar to like the style of training that I'm doing now anyway. So that's why I was like, well, I can do that. That's stuff that I'm good at anyway. So I'll just jump across and get into that. And then now cycling, like I'm looking at velodrome racing, which is, only 10, depending on the race, but like very powerful sort of short, fast bursts. So I'm I can jump towards that. It's sort of like a parallel sort of to
Yeah,
sport in a way. But like it depends what your priorities are, because if you want to do one thing, like if you want to do multiple things, you got to be willing to accept that there is going to be a bit of a push pull, and that is okay. Like I've got athletes, that I'm coaching at the moment, and like I said, CrossFit is one of those things where it's everything. Like it's fitness, it's gymnastics, so like body weight movements, it's Olympic weightlifting, so like lifting an external load. It covers a broad range of things, and depending if you're really good at one, it will affect the other one, and that's
yeah,
okay. It doesn't really matter. Like it's okay, but if you're really strong and you want to get fit, like you're gonna naturally get a little bit weaker. But it's not much, but like it's it will have an effect, is more the words I'm trying to think of. Like
yeah,
um but then if you want to, because that's what your priority is, right? Like if you want to get stronger, you got to lift more. You know what I mean? Like if you really
yeah,
want to get your snatches better, you better be doing snatches 3 to 4 times a week. And if you're doing that 3 to 4 times a week, like you don't have the time to then do your pull-ups and your handstand push-ups and your running intervals and stuff like every week. But and that's okay, but like you will get better at snatches, and then afterwards you will carry over some of that strength and that technique when you go back to learn the other stuff. But then if you really want to get good at muscle ups, you better be doing muscle ups more than like at least 3 times a week to dial in that habit and that technique and stuff like that, and build the strength around there. But again, you won't be doing ollie lifting as much, so that might start to fall off a little bit. And like
yeah.
um,
Wow.
it's yeah, unless you're a full-time athlete, this is like where everyone sort of gets cut off. Like if you're not a full-time athlete, you can't do all of it.
Yeah,
Um, but like that's what training phases and stuff are for. Like if you have a program where you've got a bit of periodization and you're focusing on one thing, like one thing might get better, the other one you might not touch it as much, but then once you've got that skill or that strength built, you can sort of maintain that and then move into another thing and then build on that. And like it does snowball. And like that's why CrossFitters are really fit and really strong and really fast, and encompassing sort of all of it. But even
the-
those athletes, like they pick a weekness and they work on it, and then
they
that's
go
how they
again.
that's how they evolve into a more sort of well-rounded athlete. So it depends on what your priorities are. Like, what do you
Yeah.
actually want to get out of it? And you've I think now that I'm saying it, like, it just sort of reminds me of a lot of conversations that I've had with people that are like, oh, why am I not getting better at this? And it's like, honestly, you're not doing it enough.
Yeah.
Like, people come to me and they want to get better at handstand push-ups, or they want to get better at muscle ups, or they want to get better at running, like whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But they might only do it once a week or once a fortnight when it pops up into class. And it's like, unfortunately, you've got to do it more times than that. Like, if
Yeah.
you
And then,
really, if you really want to get good at muscle ups, like, you're gonna have to come in after class and do some extra stuff, once or twice a week. Like, if you want to get better at running, you better go for an extra run another 2 times a week, because like, we've
and
got it in
then
our program, but it doesn't come up all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I feel like that's huge though. Like it's a huge takeaway to kind of go like, what is your priority? And
Yeah.
you can keep the other things, but you need to understand that there's give and take. Which I
Yeah.
feel like that's a huge advice for, anybody that is like listening to today's episode and kind of going, okay, how have you done it all? Like basically your advice then is exactly what you have implemented yourself. There's been give and
Mm.
take with certain things. But I guess finishing up on today's episode is like, what advice would you have to anyone that is scared to start, like either scared to start a new sport or scared to start in competing? Because obviously everything that you've done, which I find so fascinating, and how your mind just works and hyper fixates and just gets in and does the work. But if anybody, like for advice to anybody that's scared to do that, what advice do
Yeah.
you have for them?
Honestly, the best advice is to just get in and have a crack. Like, I just cannot stress enough, like, just how much fun competing is. Like, I know everyone has their levels of what they're trying to get out of it, but like, man, if you just really want to get good at something, like, add some competition in there, and like, you'll just see your results just absolutely skyrocket. Like, not even just in the sport of fitness or any of that. Like, take football, for example. Like, if you just sit there and just trained for football, you would never know if you're getting any better. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you have to have those games against people to test your skills, to test your knowledge of the craft, like the games craft, all of that stuff. Like, yeah, it's, if you can take out of your head, like, going against people and like, this is against a certain person or whatever it is, like, if you can just go into it for you, it'll be, well, one, it'll be much more enjoyable, but like, you will actually be able to break down and work on your performance to then build to the next level. Like, it just give it a crack. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Everyone's got to start somewhere, like we're talking about with the Instagram influencers and stuff. Like, unfortunately, you really only see the end result, or like their absolute highs. Like, we rarely see the lows or the training, like the hours and hours of training that goes into certain things. Like,
Yeah.
if you just if you can disconnect from that and just realize that everyone started from nothing, and then they just built, and they didn't just build for a little bit, they built for a long time. Like I said, I've been doing this for the sport of fitness for like 10 years now, and you know I'm still a student, I'm still learning as well, and it doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. You just got to
Yeah.
keep at it. And I guess, I think, like, maybe the last thing to sort of do is, like, you have to enjoy it. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is, you have to enjoy it, because if you're super fixated on the end goal, it's just gonna eat you alive. And I say that because you know, there's been certain things, like I've done that as well, you know, just hyper fixated on what the end looks like, that it takes away from the moment of what you're doing, and you can rush things, and then that's when overtraining can come into it, and then you can hurt yourself, and then you'll just go backwards anyway. So like, you have to, whatever it is, you have to enjoy it. You can't just do it for the sake of, oh, I have to do this. It's like, you don't have to do anything. Like, there are so many different things out there that is super fun and enjoyable. It's just, you got to find it, and then once you find it, you got to be you just got to stick with. You got to be consistent. That's the thing. You got to do it all the time, and you just got to push yourself. You know, like, you can't be consistent and not have any sort of progressive overload and push yourself, and you can't push yourself without any consistency. They come hand in hand to get better. So.
And then that kind of ties in everything that we've spoken about, though, right? Like, it's kind of like, you know, then if you have an end goal, then you have that accountability, like all of those sorts of things. So I feel like there was so many huge takeaways, and I can't wait to pop this episode out for everybody to listen. But before we
I
finish
hope
up
someone got a kick of it.
yeah, well, I feel like, as I said, like, you know, I think going into it and going into all of those, like, behind the scenes things is going to be really useful for anybody that's listening, because I feel like, again, you know, once you click on one thing, whether it is on social media or whether it's, you know, listening to a podcast or whatever, that's how the algorithm is. You're going to hear more of that stuff, but you never really hear this. So I feel like that's really sort of cleared things up, and also like it's kind of an insight into your mind, right? Which I was like, I think a lot of people probably just look at, you know, at each modality and how successful you've been, rather than the things that have gone into it and how each one's come about. So thank you so much for coming on today's episode, Hayden. I really can't wait to share this.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on, and yeah, it was nice to tell the story.
Wow, what a whirlwind. There's so much good takeaways. I don't even know how to end today's podcast, but I like literally was the biggest takeaways I feel like from today's episode, if you took anything away, is don't be scared to start. Just have a go. And competition isn't always about competing against other people. It's about the accountability it can bring to you in your training. We spoke about how motivation, we all know that is just a feeling. So having something to work towards can be that accountability that you need to show up. These competitions can also be a way of you proving to yourself that you can, and building that self-trust that you need. We always also spoke about lowering your expectations on yourself sometimes can help with the nerves. Like the more expectation we place on ourselves, the less enjoyable something becomes. I think this episode hits so much bigger than just sport. These are things that I feel like you can take into your life, is that it needs to be enjoyable. You need to find something that you're passionate about and something that lights you up. And not everybody cares about what you're doing. So comparison is the thief of joy. It's not about always being perfect at one thing. This episode also went through, it's about understanding that every goal requires a different version of you. And instead of getting frustrated when you focus on one thing, that one thing drops, just understand that there is give and take. Then you learn to adapt. Because strength isn't just about what you lift on a barbell. I feel like today's episode, it's your ability to evolve. And Hayden's journey shows that better than anything. So if you got value from today's episode, make sure you share it with someone who needs to hear it, that might feel tunnel visioned or scared to start, or never puts themselves out there in a competition because they're afraid of other people. Please share this episode with them and make sure you subscribe. So until next time, keep it real.